Again, thank you everybody for joining us on our 10 fundraise launch today about crowdfunding. We have Jeff Wenzel of KiwiTech here joining us, and he's got some great insights on the topic as well. Paul, our CEO, will be given a nice little interview here. So with that, Paul, you can take it away. I just want to remind everybody first, though, if you have any questions throughout the session, please drop them in the chat box and Hall will get to them. And Hall, with that, you can go ahead.
Great, thanks, Shane. And Jeff, thanks for joining us here today. Glad to have you on the show to talk about crowdfunding and how it works. And we're going to kick it off, and maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about yourself and KiwiTech.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks everybody for having me. I look forward to kind of taking everybody's questions and talking about equity crowdfunding. So I've been in the equity crowdfunding space and really the crowdfunding space since the beginning. Started in the Kickstarter world. I had the 20th Kickstarter ever, ran about 400 campaigns there, and then moved over to equity crowdfunding right when the Jobs Act kind of got passed, so about 6 years ago or now at this point. So I've ran about 140 campaigns on platforms like WeFunder, Start Engine, and Republic. And I was doing all of that as my own agency. I had about a 13-person agency. And then back in October, KiwiTech brought me on as Vice-President of Crowdfunding, and I brought my team with me. And so we're still doing the same sort of marketing for equity crowdfunding, but now I'm under the KiwiTech umbrella at this point. So got a lot of resources behind me, got a lot of data points. I've kind of seen almost everything from the start to where we are right now. Gone through obviously a pandemic, going through what we're doing now, going on with the market right now in terms of kind of the investors' temperatures. So I've just kind of seen a lot. So that's kind of where my vantage point is, just seeing it from the marketing angle and seeing how to get investors excited about startups in the Reg CF world.
Great, thanks. And like Shane said, guys, if you have any questions on the chat box, just let us know. But my first question is always, what companies do well on crowdfunding? When you see a deal, how do you know that's going to do well or that's going to be challenged?
You know, I actually think most companies can do pretty well in this space, but it does come down to, do they have a crowd? Do they have an audience? Do they have a founder that is willing to sort of put themselves out there, sort of, I call it kind of being the front man of the band, right? Willing to kind of put themselves out there and take those questions, have all the conversations. So that's like the first thing I look for is, like, does that startup even have sort of that framework that I'm talking about? From there, then I get into, what is the story? Is it something that I think is going to do well with social media, like putting it out there? Is it something that somebody's going to be able to get very quickly if they see it, if they see an ad and be excited about it? So I'm always looking for something along those lines at first, and then you can start getting into valuations. How much, what's the offering, the terms, that type of stuff. But I really feel like in the beginning, it's got to be, am I interested in it? Am I excited about it? Like, do I want to be a part of that journey that the startup is working on? So that's what I look for at first with a startup.
So is that the key to a successful crowdfunding campaign, that you can invite people to join the journey, or is it something else? Is it having traction in the product? Is it having the product be very visually accessible? What do you think is the key trigger point there?
So I think it's a combination of a lot of these things. One of the kind of a misstep I see with a lot of startups early, and this is, we're kind of talking about this raise of like maybe 100,000 to 500,000. That, like, that first, maybe that first campaign out of the gate. I actually find that a lot of times I think investors are investing in more of the team or the CEO than they are potentially all of the nuance of the company at that point, right? Or like where they're going to be. Because again, a lot of startups don't have a ton of traction at that point or at this sort of level of a Reg CF campaign. So sometimes I think it's actually focusing a little bit more on that than it is the widget, right? The we're doing this better than X, Y, and Z. I think that's a part that gets missed quite a bit, is that founder story. I think about myself. I've raised a good amount of money for all my little business ideas. And almost every single time it was like, we're investing in you, Jeff, not all the little things you're doing just quite yet. Now, when a company's starting to grow and they start to have more true traction behind them, then I think you start to pivot your pitch decks, your narrative a little bit off of the founder story or the team story, and now getting into, market share and, just kind of the more traditional things that we're looking for, in a startup when we're thinking about investing. So that's how I try to kind of let that company grow over a series of campaigns and not just one campaign trying to raise everything. So that's kind of my philosophies on it, my thoughts.
So we have a lot of companies that are raising from angels and VCs, but they also want to raise from crowdfunding. Can they do that at the same time? And what are the rules around that?
Yeah, so yes, you can. That is something that can be done. It's something I also encourage because I tell every startup, please do not look at equity crowdfunding as being your only funding source. It is one of, you're still going to be bootstrapping. You're still going to be going after angels. Still going to be looking at venture capital. I also think too, when you start looking at platforms where you want to have that lead investor, you really want to be strategic about who that person is. Can that person help you with marketing? Can that person help you with introductions? So I think that can be something where maybe an angel can kind of come into the campaign and sort of, again, put a good footing in for you. The other part too is I think Reg CF does an amazing job of getting you prepared to truly have bigger and better meetings with venture capital and angels. As you're going through a Reg CF campaign, and you're getting those FAQs, or you're getting those questions that are kind of popping in, and you're starting to kind of talk about your stuff all the time, or you're getting those questions in emails. That's the stuff that's preparing you for when you are sitting down face to face with a VC firm, that you've got those answers because you've been saying them for 6 months, right? Or you really got some of that stuff honed in. So I think you can be doing both, and I think that Reg CF helps out tremendously to kind of get you prepared for bigger conversations.
Great. So we have a couple of questions from the audience, so we'll just jump over there. How do you boost your social media visibility at the beginning of a campaign? So the beginning is the hardest part. This all comes from friends and family. It comes from, I tell people to really think about a bullseye. Inner part of that bullseye is going to be friends, family, a few investors around you. Maybe you've got an email list that you've been building, or people who have bought product from you. When these campaigns start, it all comes from that inner circle. Then you look at the second layer and the third layer. Second layer is what I describe as sort of very similar to second and third degree contacts on LinkedIn. This might be people you went to school with in the past, or people you had a job with. So if you reached out to them, you're not a complete stranger. So that's, again, that's my second layer. Third layer typically is the platform you're on. When you hit certain milestones, you should be getting in their newsletters, and you should start getting some momentum by being on a Start Engine or a WeFunder. And then the last layer of that bullseye is where I work quite a bit. Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Reddit, Google ads, trying to drive cold traffic into the page to try to get them to convert. But early in a campaign, that inner part of that bullseye is going to be building that crowd of people who are excited to kind of get your campaign off the ground, get you up to that 75 to 100,000, and then start to turn on a lot of the other strategies. Great. Next question is there a rule of thumb on social media spending to have a successful crowdfunding campaign? If so, what is it? Isn't so much a rule of thumb. I have a couple of rules internally of just kind of the data points I've seen over the last 6 years. I typically don't start any major paid media until I raise about $100,000 to $150,000, somewhere in that ballpark. I find that, driving ads from Facebook to a page that's raised $5,000, it just doesn't look good, right? It just doesn't have that energy. So again, once I hit about 100 to 150,000, that's when I start to turn on my ad spend. The second data point to that is I spend roughly about 20 grand for 60 days. Once I hit that 150 mark, that typically gives a guy like me, or really anybody running ads, to have enough data to determine what comes next. So I'll take that 20 grand and I'll spend, 5 on Facebook ads, 5 on Google ads, a couple $1,000s on Reddit and TikTok, just to see what's kind of happening. And then, like I said, from that, I should have obviously gotten a return on that ad spend, and then start to look at what comes next at 250, 275. And hopefully around that point too, you've done a disbursement, so you can pull some of the money out of the campaign and potentially then, invest back into your paid media strategies. So that's kind of the ballpark numbers that I'm usually typically playing with in the beginning of a campaign. Great. Next question is, I am looking at crowdfunding on Start Engine. How do the different crowdfunding platforms compare? So I will tell you that you'll be frustrated on all of them, because they all have their nuances and their quirks. The important thing, in my opinion, is to know what you're going to be getting into. So Start Engine, great platform. WeFunder, great platform. Republic, great platform. I've worked on all three of them. You just have to know going into it things to look for. Start Engine in particular is getting access to Google Analytics. They will give it to you, but you have to ask, right? So if you get Google Analytics, then you know what's actually happening on your page. Also
having their promote company set up a campaign for you so that they put the pixel codes in the right way. So there's little things like that that you want to know before going into it, because of how they work as opposed to WeFunder. WeFunder works a little bit differently on the back end. So there's no perfect platform. The other part too is to be very patient. All of them are growing incredibly quickly right now. So again, I'm just kind of giving you pain points that we have on our end is, you're dealing with some junior people sometimes as your account manager, and you get very frustrated when you're like, what is this person doing? Yeah, sometimes you feel like you might know more than them, and there's a strong possibility that you do. So again, I always want to make sure that my clients have patience, you're understanding, and then you're just preparing for probably 2 or 3 weeks longer than they tell you across the board. So again, no perfect answer, but just know what you're getting into in terms of the platforms.
Great. Next question is, do you recommend using a professional media company? Do you have any examples? And how about timelines?
I think it depends on what your goals and your scope is, what you've been doing in the past. A lot of times I'll be in scenarios where if I'm working with like an e-commerce company and they've got a Facebook media team or a TikTok people, like they're already running ads, they're already doing a lot of this stuff. In scenarios like that, I'm guiding, like, hey, adjust your audience this way, think about this, think about that language. That doesn't need to be as much handholding. If it's something that you aren't doing any marketing, then I recommend, you're going to have somebody on your team that at least understands this world. The next part of it is really just getting into truly understanding data. And I think that's another part that, again, if you have a good relationship with, with an agency, they should be protecting your data and setting you up for success to do multiple campaigns. One of the things that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit is companies, and the platforms themselves sort of harvesting all that data that you're paying for. So I always want my startups to be very cautious of understanding you need to have that data, especially if you're going to be running, a campaign next year or, whatever it might be down the future. You want to make sure that you're securing that. So those are the types of partnerships you want to be looking for is, what are they saying? How are you making sure that your startup is set up for success, not just in this campaign, but the campaigns coming down the pipeline. So hopefully that answers that question for you. So
there are platforms like Start Engine, WeFunder, and Republic where they harvest the data. How do you do it with harvesting the data yourself? Can you run it on your own website?
You can, and that is super exciting right now for guys like myself. That's what we're kind of pivoting a lot of our startups to, is using platforms like Silicon Prairie, where we're running most of the campaign on your own website. And then using like a third party like that, or Delmore Group, I think is doing this quite a bit, where you're almost sort of white labeling the portal portion of it. And there's good and bad in this, we can kind of talk back and forth, but I do like the fact that that data that you're bringing in, or the investors you're bringing in, is not going to be harvested and then sent every other campaign on a portal, right? So like that's been a little bit challenging for a guy like me, is after 6 years, I've had, 5 or 6 companies where I've done 3 or 4 campaigns. And the way those campaigns have gotten stronger is that we built the data the right way. So they've got, 15,000 people in their MailChimp account of investors, right? They put that time in, but those people have also gotten sort of spammed, for lack of a better term, every other offering on those portals. And that's a little challenging moving forward, especially with where we're going in terms of data and how hard it is to raise and just how saturated the market is. So those are kind of some things to think about.
Great. Next question is, what's the legal and accounting requirements for a crowdfunding campaign?
Well, all the portals do a really good job of walking you through that. They all have compliance departments. They all have legal. They will hold your hand through that entire process. I am definitely not a lawyer, and I know enough to be dangerous, but you'll definitely want to walk through with the portals on what's necessary there, or work with an attorney that does this type of stuff and getting you ready for your Form C, getting your books in order. So I always recommend, work with the portals. That's what they're set up for. That's also why they're taking a percentage of the raise, right? To get you guys set up in that. So when you get on there, really let them hold your hand through the terms, how you want to set up the campaign, even having them have some thoughts on valuations. Again, you don't have to take their exactly what they say, but just they're going to have some say in that too, because they're looking at all the campaigns as well. So, but like I said, I recommend working with the portals on that type of stuff. Great.
The next question is, how much time should you spend preparing for the campaign? Most people come a little bit unprepared, I believe, but what do you recommend?
Start today. As fat, like do not wait. That is the number one mistake we see in every single campaign, is that they start their marketing efforts after they launch, and it's about momentum. It's about building up that crowd. It's about getting people prepared for what's coming. So there is no set time. I'm just letting everybody know it's longer than you think it is. If I get a campaign who's even thinking about it, I'm asking for at least like 60 to 90 days, because you've got, what are the creative elements of this campaign? What are photos, videos, copy? What's the page design layouts, right? Which we want to make these pages look good so that they're converting. Going through the compliance departments all take different times based on the portal you're on. You also, might want to swing the bat a second time. So let's just say you do make some creative and you're like, boy, I think we're missing something here. Give it another breath to A/B test some stuff. Then if you have a mailing list, start segmenting them so that sometimes this happens for me with e-commerce brands. They come to me with 30,000 people in a MailChimp account. Well, we don't want to be blasting all of those people just because they bought a beach towel from you a while ago, right? So we want to segment them and say, hey, would you be interested in investment potential? Maybe we resurvey them. So you want to make sure you're getting your data in order, you're segmenting stuff, you're getting your creative in order. And it's definitely, none of this stuff I'm talking about is a rush job where you're like, all right, we just got this done and we'll just put it up right away. So again, start the planning and really take your time building that audience and building that creative before you launch a campaign.
Then how long do most campaigns run? I know it varies based on the amount, but what are you seeing out there?
So I typically tell people plan 6 to 8 months. And again, I say that that's the long tail. Now start working backwards with what was your audit? How much are you trying to raise? There's, when was your Form C filed? So there's variations in that, but typically on my campaigns, trying to raise 500,000 up or $1 million and up, 6 to 8 months. You should be thinking is the campaign is active. So
what's the most important thing you should do before you actually launch the campaign? You've mentioned many things, but if you had to pick one thing, what would you call out?
Start building a crowd, since it's called crowdfunding. And that crowd can be, again, it can still be friends and family. It can be investors that you're connecting with. It can be people who are just signing up because they're interested in what you're working on. They can be people who are just, you're getting email addresses, you're getting cell phone numbers, whatever it is, you're building at least something. When I fail is when I'm at ground zero, where a company comes to me and they're like, we have 100 people on our MailChimp account. Like, who am I marketing? Well, who am I marketing this to? And again, there's no true set number, but I got 3,000 or 4,000 people on a mailing list of people who are interested in your field or your vertical, whatever you're in. There's just got to be some numbers that we can start to look at.
I remember when Kickstarter first came out, I was always amazed at how some campaigns, they would launch it and within the first 2 days, they reach 50% of their goal. And I thought, well, that must be a really exciting product. I later found out it's because they actually started 2 months prior and just told everybody, when I launch the campaign, you will put money in, yes or no. And then so my mode is always, have a 20% of the campaign already raised before we launch, and then just tell people, here's where you punch the money in and go 100%. Forward from there. But
I want to I want to be between $75,000 to $100,000 by the end of the first month or month and a half of a campaign. Now I've got some traction. I've got some data. For a guy like me, I'm looking at Google Analytics and going, okay, where did just that come from? Was it mobile? Was it desktop? Was it Safari? Like, are there what's the data off of that amount of money? Even if it is friends and family, because that's going to start to tell me what did they click on? Even on the emails, did they read email 1 instead of email 2? Or, so again, you're really taking not just that amount of money, but you're getting that data to determine what comes next, so that, you're swinging with a bigger bat when you start going out to that general public, right? Like, all right, why keep sending email number 1 when my friends didn't even open email number 1, right? You know what I mean? Like it really, when you think about it that way, you go, oh, I see why we want to get to these milestones.
Well, great. Next question from the audience is, I hear that conventional VCs generally won't invest after crowdfunding. Have you found that to be true?
No, that's old school mindset. I actually think you're going to, what I hear on my end is you're going to continue to hear more VCs. And I think this is also going to be where the market's at right now and might be going is prove it. Let me see what you can do out there through the crowd. Again, obviously making sure that your cap table stays clean, depending on the portal you're working on. But I think you're going to continue to see more VCs make you prove it a little bit more. And again, I heard this also back in the days of Kickstarter, because it used to be VCs would say, if you did a Kickstarter, I wouldn't invest in you because you put out your IP, or you now every venture capital would go do your Kickstarter first. So you really want to go out and prove that. And then the other part of this is, if you do this the right way and you spend the time and you build that, and let's just theoretically say that you get up to 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 investors in your campaign, you're at a different position now when you go to VC. You're going to feel different. You're going to have some different bargaining chips in your back pocket, right? Not to say that you don't want VC, but you can also sit there and go, well, maybe I don't need to raise as much from them just right now. I might run another equity campaign 18 months from now and just grow potentially a little bit more strategically than I just got, $5 million from this VC firm. And now I'm not quite set up to really truly handle that money. So sometimes I think staggered growth can sometimes be a little bit better for a startup than here's a whole bunch of money. And I also say that because that's how I failed. I got too much money. I was not prepared, and my ship sank a little bit. So yeah.
So we talked about launching a campaign, but after you've launched the campaign, what should you be working on to continue that success going forward?
Yeah. So this is actually a friction because a lot of founders don't realize how much work it is, because they're also working on a business. And then you have a guy like me saying, I need you to be on this event. I need you to respond to everybody. I need you to be, having conversations. And then they tell me, yeah, but I'm working on my business. So please, you have to plan. It's a lot of work. This isn't a set it and forget it. It's not I hired Jeff, so he's got it. I tell almost every founder, when you hire an agency, my job is to put the ball on the tee, but you will swing the bat. Like they're not investing in me, they're investing in you. So a lot of times it's, hey, I got this LinkedIn connection, I connected you. Did you set up that meeting and have that call with that person? How did the call go? Did you, were you charming? Did you, did you piss them off? Were you a nice guy? Like what? I can't hold, it's really challenging to hold the hand all the way through. So there's a point where I sort of have to let go and give it to that founder. So again, that's where I come back and I want to make sure that founder is willing to take those calls, willing to get on meetings, have that lunch thing, do the events. We like to have events for our campaigns almost every month. Respond on social media. I didn't say post social media, respond to the questions, respond to the FAQs, right? When people are asking, they don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from the person that they're investing in. So a lot of it is just really kind of staying on the ball and being present and not setting it and forgetting it, because you won't raise any money that way. It never happens like that.
Great. So next question is, what is your agency charge to run a crowdfunding campaign?
So we're all over the place. It really kind of depends on what a client brings us. Some clients come to us where they've got basically, most of their airplane built. In scenarios like that, I'm jumping on and sort of helping, right? Like it's not a build from the ground up. If a client comes to me at ground zero, obviously our prices are much higher. It's a lot more man hours. And I know that there's a wide range of what agencies are charging out there. I'll just kind of give you big ballpark numbers, because this is what should be in your mind of kind of general cost. You're probably looking somewhere between 20 to 30K for building out of assets, running the whole campaign, building out Facebook ads, just basically having a campaign manager from start to finish. And again, thinking about 8 months. So I'm with clients for a long time. So that's kind of big ballpark numbers. And then, like I mentioned, the ad spend, roughly 20K for about 60 days once you do 150 in the raise. But on that ad spend, you're really hoping that you're getting into a disbursement schedule, taking 10 grand from a disbursement, putting it back into Facebook ads because you had a good return on ad spend. So that's what you hope to get on the ad spend. But general, those are kind of just some big ballpark costs. And even those costs can go up too if somebody's got to fly to do a video, if we got to fly to you, again, the cost can go up. But I think somewhere between 20 to 30K is what you should be somewhat planning on expending on a campaign assets to run a campaign.
I've had some companies come saying they want to run a crowdfunding campaign for the not only the funding, but also the branding and the awareness. How often do you think that really applies? And does that really work to run a crowdfunding campaign to generate just more awareness of your product?
I'm not exactly sure that that's exactly what's happening. Obviously, obviously there's some help. So if I'm running Facebook ads and I spend $150,000 in Facebook ads, well, obviously I'm helping the brand to some degree because I'm raising the awareness of just it being in social media, right? Or just being out in that world. However, I think it's going to be the opposite. I think a stronger brand is going to have a much better time running an equity crowdfunding campaign than a company that has zero brand, has no identity, has no founder stories. That's when, like, again, what do you want me to do? Like, there isn't anything really there at this point. So, yeah.
Cool. Next question is, what is your strategy to tap the investors from your first round of funding when you run your second or third round?
Yeah, that's my starting point. So I love when we have that scenario because I'm going back to them with updates on the page. So obviously on the, if it's like a Start Engine page or a WeFunder page, I'm updating that page right away. Ideally, hopefully that data has been put into some sort of MailChimp account or Klaviyo, whatever it might be. And I'm asking them either to re-opt in or I'm asking them to come back in. And I also hope that I've got really good early bird terms for them on my second campaign. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll let them invest at our first round valuation so that they're getting a little bit of a bang for their buck, so that they're coming in right away on that second campaign and getting me up to that maybe 200,000 really quickly. Now, the other part of this, though, that can be a little bit challenging for campaigns is if you haven't done a very good job of keeping them in the loop from campaign 1 to campaign 2, some of those people will fall off, or they'll feel like they haven't gotten their money's worth, for lack of a better term, right? They haven't really felt like they're a part of a journey. One of the things that I think all the portals have done an absolutely piss poor job from the beginning is that investor communication post-campaign. So that, again, they should be seeing updates. They should be seeing special blogs. Maybe they're getting special content because they believe in you. So that, and if you haven't been doing that, start some of that for a month, to warm them back up for that second campaign. So again, those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. I'm going to actually add one more quick thing. Other thing that I've struggled with too, or campaigns have struggled with, I should say, is when you do a campaign on like a Start Engine and that ends, and then 2 weeks later you start another one. Those second campaigns have almost always underperformed because of the fatigue. There hasn't, there's no reason for a new ask. They just kind of relaunched it and they're like, all right, now invest again. And those investors are like, I already saw this. There's nothing new in this thing. Like, I don't get it. So I usually like to have a little bit of a downtime between campaign 1 to campaign 2, just to let the dust settle a little bit and also find a new core reason why we're running campaign number 2. Like, why are we doing this? We want to, what's the new ask? So that's just another part of this too, that I've seen campaigns struggle with.
How long do you wait? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? What's a meaningful amount of time for people to catch their breath?
I don't think there's an exact answer. I think that is a gut feeling that a really good founder should know, and he should be taking a temperature. Again, let's just theoretically say that nobody's opening those emails on MailChimp, right? Like, well, that's going to tell you something, right? Like, maybe nobody's responding to, maybe you put up a new thing or you had an event and nobody showed up. You got to be kind of taking the temperature to kind of gauge that. But I do think that the one thing is what's the second ask, right? Like, so I've had one of my campaigns, she's a really good friend of mine, Smart Girls. I think we ran 4 campaigns. Every time we run a campaign, there is a very clear-cut answer as to why we're doing another raise. We want to achieve this thing. During COVID, we pivoted to an online teaching program from her first product, right? So like we had a very, we had a reason to do this, and then we adjust our content to support that reason. So I think that that's actually the more important thing than just picking an arbitrary date of 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is.
So there are many social media platforms to use out there: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. What do you think are the top best values for your money for running these campaigns today? And I know it's a mixture. You can't just choose one, but what do you see?
So there is no such thing as choosing one. It has to be approached as a 360 approach. If anybody says to you it's Facebook ads and only, they're just in la la land. The reason that is right now is when I'm looking at budgets, one of my top indicators is my CPMs, which stands for cost per 1,000 impressions. So right now when I have a budget, across the board, if I'm running just Facebook ads, it's between $20 to $40 for 1,000 impressions. That's expensive. So TikTok and Reddit right now are between $5 to $8 to $10 1,000 impressions. So sometimes I look at, can I fill the bucket with traffic from those channels, but then retarget them with a Facebook ad, Instagram ad, or a Google retargeting ad, right? But I've at least filled the bucket cheaper, maybe got more interest. So I ran maybe I ran all brand awareness ads from TikTok. Reddit, I love for all the subreddits. So I'll just go and pick all my subreddits based on my client's vertical, also the alternative investment subreddits, and just try to drive those eyeballs with clicks into my page. Just get to my page, then have my pixel fire for Facebook and Google, Taboola, whatever it might be, and try to bring them back in once I've at least filled the bucket. So that's when I'm looking at my full budgets. It's what's my top of the funnel budget and what's my bottom of the funnel to try to get that investor. So really got to be thinking about a 360 approach when it comes to paid media right now.
Well, privacy rules have changed a lot of the social media landscape out there. What impact do you see it having on crowdfunding campaigns, if any?
Yeah, so it's shot me in the foot, and it's why almost every single one of my campaigns has struggled. When I say struggle, it just means that it used to be I'd spend $150,000 in Facebook ads and I'd raise $1 million. And I was like, oh, I'm a genius. That world is completely gone. And the reason is that because we're running on all these portals, Start Engine, WeFunder, Republic, we don't own those domains. So therefore, we can never optimize our ads for the events on third-party domains. So therefore, a lot of our data is, it's just firing. You also have right now nuances where, like a platform like Start Engine, they're trying to find, everybody's trying to find solutions for this, but Start Engine in particular, sometimes their Facebook pixel will fire every transaction on the entire platform under your pixel. So you'll wake up and you'll go, oh my gosh, I got like 45 investors this weekend. This is amazing. You go into your dashboard and you have 3 and you're like, what the and now you realize that your pixel fired, but that means your pixel fired for everything. So therefore your data is really dirty now, right? So all of this is a problem. The only solution that truly exists is running a really solid UTM program, meaning, so that I can track, ad 1, ad 2, ad 3, and then looking in Google Analytics and having goal tracking set up to say, all right, this UTM fired, and now we got a conversion from here. But now all the portals do that a little bit differently. So it goes back to the nuances of which portal you're on, how are they doing it, what's the goal tracking formula have to be set up. And so at the end of the day, all of us are handcuffed. This is why I believe running campaigns on our own domains is going to become it's just where we're all going, because then you would actually be able to control that data because you would own that domain. So then you can set up all your events to fire correctly if we're doing it on our own domain. So that's why I believe that's going to be the push for a lot of startups who are looking at equity crowdfunding in the future.
So what are some tools out there for managing data in a crowdfunding campaign? What do you recommend, or what should we be looking at?
So Google Analytics is number one, and Google, having your Google Tag Manager set up, and then making sure that you have basically every pixel you can in your GTM. So even from Twitter, Taboola, TikTok. So just get it all set up so that way it's at least firing. Second part I also see too is I see a lot of companies merge all their data, so they'll have just one Google Analytics for their business and their equity crowdfunding campaigns. Separate that so that you have clean conversions and you have clean data. So that's another part of it. And then after that, it's still Facebook pixel, TikTok pixel. It's just at least getting those things to fire. And then there's another tool I use quite a bit called Switchly. And that tool allows me to, and this is specific to like WeFunder or Republic. It at least allows me to put pixels on the links. So when the links are clicked, the pixels will at least fire, because on Republic, there is no pixel. WeFunder, it's really odd on their back end how they're doing it. So I can get in the weeds on that. But this tool Switchy, like I said, allows me to put the pixels in the links themselves. So when the link is clicked, the pixel will at least fire that, hey, this person clicked the link, right? And again, not perfect, but it's something. So yeah, that's just some stuff to think about.
Great. If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and post it. We're getting to near the end of our time. Unless you have more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. And Jeff, my last question was about distributed autonomous organization, DAOs, coming up. It looks like that might be a follow-on to crowdfunding. What do you think about putting everybody into a network and giving them tokens to incentivize them to invest or buy the product? And is that going to be a crowdfunding tool, or is that just something that the blockchain guys thought up?
I don't know where that's going. I'm going to be watching it, obviously. I'm intrigued as to how FINRA responds to some of this stuff, and the SEC, and how that's going to look. It's similar to, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misreading a little bit. I mean, it feels kind of similar to the WeFunder Cash that they're doing right now, right? Which that truly feels like it skates really close to a line that like I read through it. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I read it. I'm like, boy, this just doesn't seem like you're supposed to be doing this, but whatever. So I don't know. I truly don't quite know yet. I'm intrigued by it, obviously. And I'm watching it. But I don't really know quite yet. Yeah, I'm not sure.
The tools are starting to come into focus. It looks pretty interesting. I like the idea of incentivizing people with tokens. That gets everybody working in the right direction, which really makes it interesting. And then it puts control in the whole group, not just one player, so to speak. Yeah. In the ICO world, 2017, 18, it just seems like people raised money for, 2 or 3 guys came up with an idea, raised money, and then it just kind of went away for whatever reason. Yeah. Next question from the audience is, how is the total funded through the crowd trending these days, and how does it compare to more traditional funding methods? So how's crowdfunding doing on the funded trend?
So actually, I was kind of researching some stats yesterday. I think we've had these last quarters, each quarter is getting bigger. So it's actually growing from the data points I'm looking at. I use tools like Hello Sharky or King's Crowd quite a bit to kind of just look at the kind of the gauge of where everything's going. But if I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's grown each quarter. I don't think it's going to slow down. One of the issues we are having right now is it is very, very saturated, right? The amount of issuers is way outpacing the amount of the retail investors growing. That's one of the things that this is a pet project I'm working on. I think the portals need to do a better job of educating the average person that they can be an investor in the space, because right now, I mean, if you're in a newsletter for one of the portals, you're one of 30 companies that just launched on a Tuesday. So very, very saturated. It's hard to sort of pop up, but you are still getting the bigger companies kind of coming in. I think I saw a stat the other day that, I think WeFunder this year has had 3 companies hit that 5 million. So again, there's only a few out there, but again, those will push the, just those 3 alone will push the numbers and skew them. So you really kind of want to look at a whole. I think you're going to continue to see more and more. So this isn't like Kickstarter. There really isn't such a failure, right? Kickstarter, if you don't raise the 20 grand, it failed. It says failed. In some of these campaigns, yeah, you only raised $50,000, right? So is that failure for a company? Potentially. I also think too, you have to approach and put context around some of these campaigns. So I'm going to give a quick story, an example of one. Had a company who came to me pre-MVP, just an idea in the construction business, right? App, right? So really challenging. Now he had some good creative. So for him, we ended up raising $130,000 with like 113 investors. I think that that's an absolute grand slam when I don't even have the widget doesn't even exist in the world, right? It's just an idea. It's just a drawing at this point, right? Now that guy thought that he should do $500,000 by hiring me. And I was like, you're out of your mind. Like there's no data to support what you think that's going to happen. And I think that your app is going to do 130, and that's what it did. So I think that that's an actual success. So I think it's more important to be looking at what's success in your startup, realistic, right? Where are you? Some of the data points we've kind of mentioned earlier. And is that attainable? Because a lot of companies come to me like, we want to raise $5 million. How many emails do you have? None. Do you have a product? No. Do you have any customers? No. I should raise $5 million. And I have to go back. What are you talking about? Like, it's just not realistic. Like, is 250,000 realistic? Would that be enough to grow from A to B? So I think it's more about that mindset than looking at the whole. And then I don't ever try to compare VC to this world, because I think that they're just, we're on two different planets at the end of the day, and what we're all looking for and what success is. So I separate those worlds in my mind.
Great. Next question is, how do you think the slowdown of the economy will impact crowdfunding?
So I think there's two things that this is what I'm betting on right now. Is one, I'm very intrigued to see if more tangible products or tangible investment stuff starts moving back into the space. Example would be real estate. I wonder if more and more people are going to be looking and going, you know what, if I am going to invest, I want to invest in the building, the land, the tangible thing. So I'm currently right now sitting and waiting to see if that's a trend that we start to see, because typically real estate and Reg CF just, there's a whole nother world for that, right? So this is a wonder, does that start to kind of come into this space a little bit? I don't know. I do think that I think you're going to see some angels and VCs maybe move some money over here. I don't think it's going to be a ton. I'm not that hopeful for it. I think we're going to probably see a pretty good dip in this space. I think disposable income is going to be challenging for guys like myself. Like, I'm a retail investor. I invest, $500 there, $1,000 there. As the monthly bills get tighter on a guy like me, why am I putting $500 over here in a company that may or may not be successful? So I think we're going to see a dip in this space. But I'm intrigued as to if there's any other industries or something like that might come into it that, maybe that picks up a little bit. I was reading something the other day too, that like food and beverage is still one of the top, verticals in this space, which again, feels like a tangible thing. Everybody wants to eat, everybody wants to have that beer, that brewery company. So I wonder if we continue to see trends in that, but maybe a little bit less in, say, medical, right? Maybe something that's a long-term play, or I don't know, or maybe the crypto type world takes a little bit of a dip in this space. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm wondering if, that we're trending to.
Great. Well, I think we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you guys in the audience for asking great questions. Any closing thoughts there from your side, Jeff, and how best for people to take contact with you?
Yeah, obviously I'm all over the internet. So if you search, you'll find me. But if you go to kiwitech.com, you can reach out to us there. My email is just jeff@kiwitech.com. You can also go to fuzzywenzel.com. You'll find me there. That's my old nickname. So yeah, you can you'll find me out there. I put out quite a bit of content. I've got blogs that go out all the time too in this space. So just reach out. And I talk to everybody. So obviously you can pick my brain as much as you guys want. So, so that's kind of it. And then I just know too that like I love this space because I love getting into the startups world. I think it's an awesome vertical for a lot of companies to get into, but you've got to do it the right way. And just know it's hard work. I can't tell you how many times companies call me and they're like, yeah, we're going to start one like in a couple of weeks. Like, that's just not it, right? Like that's just not how it works. So just be thinking about that. But if you do it the right way, I can tell you it's awesome, because my companies that have run 4 or 5 of them, they've gotten to this sort of holy grail of equity crowdfunding, where they've got their investors and they're communicating with them. They kind of know what they're going to raise each time they do a campaign. They've got more power, in their other conversations out there. So it can be done really, really. I think when done correctly, it's an awesome tool for any startup to have in their back pocket.
That's great. Well, appreciate you sharing that with us today. We'll connect everybody together afterwards, but want to thank everybody in the audience for coming and asking great questions. We'll be back for more of these sessions later. And with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.